Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With the AEW WrestleDream 2024 instant analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and we are here shortly after AEW WrestleDream went off the air to break down the latest AEW pay-per-view. We have an absolute ton to discuss on this show, and it is already super late here on the East Coast. So straight off the top, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
Please head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating. On Apple, take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Episode drops, news, analysis highlights, all of that good stuff. You also get to vote in pre- and post-show polls, sending questions and comments for the show. All of that on Twitter at Getting Overcast. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get instant reaction audio to every major TV show and exclusive news analysis posts every single Friday. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Now, normally when we do an instant analysis podcast, be it for a WWE Premium Live event or an AEW pay-per-view, the first thing we do is crack open a cold one. And then what we do is break down every single thing that happens on this show. Unfortunately, because the Silver King is solo tonight, there will be no cold beverage outside of my big glass of water I have right here. And unfortunately, because it is so late here on the East Coast and I didn't actually get to watch AEW WrestleDream live, I had to watch it after the fact. On this instant analysis, we're going to do something slightly different. We are going to discuss all the big newsworthy moments in the matches that absolutely need to be talked about coming out of WrestleDream. Then we're going to put a pin in it and we're going to cycle back to the rest this coming Thursday on our normal AEW and NXT podcast. It is a timing issue only. Certainly when we got into the WrestleDream card, we mentioned that there were a lot of matches that didn't necessarily seem to be the most important thing from storyline standpoints, from builds. They were just kind of thrown on the card. My understanding, of course, is that played out significantly throughout the show. I do want to shout out right off the top a couple of longtime listeners, McCoy at McCoy1108, Eric Goldfader at EG Movieman, and Card Cashers 1 at Card Cashers, all on Twitter, who really helped me put this show together, told me what I absolutely needed to watch, where those moments were in the show. That way, I was able to fast forward a little bit. We are still going to discuss an absolute ton from AEW WrestleDream. We're just not talking about every single item. Like I said, some of that will be saved for Thursday, but stick around with us. We're going to talk about all of the major items coming out of this show. And with that said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. And we're going to start where AEW WrestleDream ended. That was the AEW Championship. Bryan Danielson defending against Jon Moxley. Of course, the semi-stipulation here is as soon as Danielson loses the AEW title, he would retire as a full-time competitor. So Mox attacked Bryan as he entered the ring, and they didn't turn off Final Countdown because doing that, I guess, got over so strong during Anarchy in the Arena. It was ridiculous in this type of situation, though. Marina Shafir stopped Bryan from choking Mox with a cord as Danielson was focused on ending the match early. Mox hit a pile driver on the announce table. The match slowed significantly from there, with Mox taking Bryan apart methodically, focusing on his neck. Marina got involved regularly. They bit each other at one point. Danielson hit a spider German suplex out of the corner, but he missed a diving headbutt, with Mox hitting Seth Rollins' stomp for a near fall. They exchanged strikes, with Shafir finally getting ejected when she grabbed Danielson's leg. That was preventing a Bazaiku knee. Mox hit a cutter on the distraction. Bryan flipped out of a German suplex, hit a knee for a false finish. Bryan came back, stomping his head in before a LeBell Lock. John reached the ropes. Mox caught a tope suicida for Death Rider into the exposed floor ringside. The crowd kind of died on that move. Mox whispered something into his ear, hit the hammer elbows. Danielson broke a choke. They countered a bunch of submissions. Mox ultimately no-sold a shoulder catcher suplex and ate a Bazaiku knee for a false finish. Mox then stopped another attempt with 2 lariats to hit Death Rider for a 1 count, then pleaded, "Don't make me do this." Bryan spit on and slapped him. So Mox hit a gotch pile driver and pulled Danielson back from the ropes with a rear naked choke as the referee just called the match, despite Bryan actually placing his hands on Mox's arm, which was around his neck. The referee didn't check Danielson. He didn't move his arm, anything. He just looked at him and called the match. It was an immensely bland finish to a full-time career retirement match. It was meant to be dramatic and devastating, with Bryan trying but failing to reach the ropes. But since he was struggling throughout the entire match, it didn't actually land with the dramatic effect they wanted. The match itself was actually extremely well put together from a layout and pacing standpoint. The match story fit the larger plot, but it very much seemed to me as a viewer like the guys were working around Bryan's injury, just given the way it all went down. It seemed like he couldn't do a lot of stuff and couldn't wrestle at the speed and to the level that he wanted, and they had to build the match around that. Given the talent of both guys and the importance of the match within Bryan's career, it did leave a lot to be desired. Yes, Danielson will wrestle more matches in the future, but this didn't exactly get Mox over as some dominant dude. And one can argue that Danielson's loss in this situation was wasted on someone who didn't need it. Now, maybe they need it for the storytelling. That's certainly possible because a lot more happened we're going to get to momentarily. In terms of the match, I actually feel like I'm going to be a little bit generous on this. I'm saying 3.75 stars, B+. Mox's crew came out after the bell, not so much to celebrate, but to support him. Claudio Castagnoli put the AEW title in a black duffel bag for an unknown reason. Presumably Mox will, debut a different one on Wednesday. Mox went to suffocate Bryan again, only for Wheeler Yuta and Darby Allin to run down for the save. Once the ring cleared, Wheeler attacked Darby from behind and hit a Bazaiku knee. Allen's wrist got taped in the corner. As he pleaded for everything to stop, he was watching Yuta suffocate Danielson with a plastic bag as his initiation. Private Party and Jeff Jarrett ran down, but they got murked immediately. And Jim Ross exclaimed, "Not Jeff Jarrett," which in this super dramatic moment made me laugh my ass off at 2 a.m. Eastern. Claudio then put a chair around Bryan's neck and stomped it, with Danielson convulsing. It took all of this for officials and referees to finally storm the ring. Like, maybe police officers could have come down because someone was being asphyxiated by a plastic bag. I don't know. This time, some bigger named wrestlers were by their side. Excalibur faked tears on commentary as the wrestlers were beside themselves, watching Danielson get braced and stretchered out of the ring. Now, look, credit where it's due for the effort. Commentary worked overtime trying to make this work. I get it. The goal was to make Mox's crew look insane and dastardly, where the entire locker room needs to come out against them. But if that's the case, and I know that Darby came out first, I understand, but don't send Private Party and Jarrett out there. I mean, that's just idiotic. Really, the issue with this group is that I cannot get myself to actually care about them. Maybe that's just me, but talking in riddles and having Marina Shafir be the muscle, I'm not against her. I like that she's part of the group, but she's the number 2 to Mox and hasn't actually done anything. They don't really have a manifesto of any kind other than saying they're bringing war to AEW and things need to change and Mox is the only one who can do it. But that's not actually specific, when it comes to a mission or anything like that. I thought Nigel McGuinness taking a serious tone on commentary, despite his hatred for Danielson, that was probably the most unique part. It sold it the best. But the biggest issue is that the crowd was more depressed than it was vitriolic. I saw a lot of people criticizing this in my limited reading that I had before starting the show tonight. But I don't believe it was poorly done. That said, I'm also not going to sit here and tell those people they were wrong. The end of the show just kind of ended. And I saw people saying, well, AEW always does these big dramatic finishes that are super exciting. The babyface gets over, everyone cheers, and you leave on a high note. You guys are kind of just upset that a heel won, and that's how the show ended. No, that's not really the case. The annoying part, if you want to call it that, is that the show just kind of ended. And it wasn't the only match on the card that just kind of ended. And when that is the final scene that you're left with, it's not saying it won't be effective. It's possible that a lot of people really bought into this and very much care what's going to happen next. And maybe Dynamite on Wednesday does a huge rating. But it's tough to kind of get up for it, right? It's tough to kind of say, oh my God, that was such an incredible show when your main event wasn't even close to the best match on the card. I don't know if it was the third or fourth best match on the entire card. And not everything is about match ratings and all that bullshit. But even in terms of happenings, like Bryan lost. We knew he was going to lose, or we expected he was going to lose. We discussed that on the Ultimate Preview. Do I hate Mox more coming out of this? No. Do I hate Yuta more coming out of it? Maybe. But this is like the fifth most important guy in the entire group. You know what I mean? Do I very much care to see Orange Cassidy and Adam Cole, spoiler alert, forgot to mention that, and Darby Allin and, all these guys fight this group? Not really. I don't really care about it. And it's AEW's job to make me care. And maybe they will. Coming up this Wednesday on Dynamite, we will find out. Let's move to the International Championship match. Will Ospreay, Ricochet, and Konosuke Takeshita in a triple threat. Ricochet wore regular tights for a change, so I guess maybe all three guys just look different. They did the stupid Superman shit again to start, but Takeshita stepped in for me with a double drop kick to spoil it. Ricochet threw Ospreay into Takeshita, who grabbed him for a really cool neckbreaker DDT combo. Ospreay jumped off Ricochet's back, but Takeshita caught him for a Death Valley driver on the apron, only for Ricochet to hit a Meteora on him. Ricochet countered Stormbreaker into Hurricanrana cover, then countered Hidden Blade into a backslide bomb. Ospreay came back with a powerbomb Styles Clash. Ospreay no-sold a deadlift German suplex from Takeshita, who countered a handspring from Ricochet into a Blue Thunder bomb. Takeshita murdered both guys with perfect forearms. Ospreay then flipped out of a lariat, hitting an Oz Cutter in a great spot, only to eat a 450 from Ricochet on the landing. Sick sequence right there. Ricochet flipped out of a Doomsday device before he and Ospreay each basically no-sold Poison Ranas before Takeshita, who took two German suplexes, hit a German suplex on both of them. Ricochet hit a shooting star press, eating a knee from Takeshita on the landing. That was a double cover false finish. Takeshita took out Ricochet with a cradle tombstone pile driver through a table, then kicked out at 1 on a Hidden Blade and 2.5 on a second. Don Callis ran in with a screwdriver. Ospreay stopped him. Kyle Fletcher ran in and stabbed Ospreay with it as Callis was prone. Takeshita then hit a pump knee with an injured referee counting 1, 2, 3 for the title change. Fletcher then hit Tiger Driver on Ospreay, who sold a concussion with a fencing posture and I guess more convulsions and stuff to end the segment. The Fletcher heel turn was certainly unexpected, just given their prior relationship, but it was badly needed to give him direction. Having Ospreay lose the title twice in short order was surprising. Obviously, the goal with him is to be AEW champion, but Takeshita, he's well deserving, and he's going to be a great champion as a heel. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it here, I believe every championship that is an actual AEW title is held by a heel right now, which is certainly interesting decision-making. Longtime listeners know how I feel about the fake concussion stuff. Going so far as a fencing posture in kayfabe, to me, it's disgusting and it's unnecessary. It almost feels like it's making light of people who have serious problems like that. Overall, this was an incredible spectacle of wrestling skill. Two of the best in the world and one of the most dynamic high flyers in the world, just going all out with a really well put together match featuring tons of awesome spots and sequences. It's exactly what you would expect from all three of these guys. There's no doubt they delivered. It certainly could have used more match story, and obviously going with an interference finish prevents it from achieving the levels required, at least for me, for it to be a match of the year contender. But it was awesome. It was easily the best match of the night. I'm not sure it's something I would watch again. I would certainly check out individual clips. Oh my God, I remember that one moment from this match. It was crazy. How the hell did they do that? Like, for sure. But there was a lot of, plan set up and execution and flips and spots and all that. And if you love that, and you just want to see crazy athletic achievements, and that's what you care about most, then I'm sure this was a 5-star match for you. For me, 4.5 stars, an A, excellent in pretty much every way. But when I think about the best matches of this year, some of which, by the way, involve Ospreay, this will not be among those for me, but it certainly stood out on this show. Jay White fought Hangman Page. This opened the main card. Hangman thumbed the eyes while sitting on the top rope, so White did the same with him hanging down and hit a Death Valley driver on the ring apron. White kept preventing Buckshot Lariat, but reducing in-ring space, only to take a pop-up powerbomb on the apron and a powerbomb into the attached steel steps, which could have been super dangerous, but they executed it. Credit to them. Hangman went on to use his belt. The referee threatened to DQ him. White spit at him and hit a knee breaker on the ramp. Then he avoided a low blow from Hangman and dumped him on his head with a Snapdragon suplex. Page came back with Deadeye, but sold an earlier injured knee on the landing. White then caught Buckshot Lariat cold. Page was delayed hitting it due to the knee, and he countered it into Blade Runner for the 1-2-3. This was another excellent match with a strong story throughout and a smart finish that protected Hangman while giving White the win he needed upon his return. It was one of my favorite matches of the entire night. We discussed on the Ultimate Preview how this would be difficult to achieve because both pretty much needed to win the match. Some will argue Hangman should not have lost coming out of the Swerve feud, but if he's not immediately going for the title, then having him face adversity here makes some sense. They should probably rematch, though, with Hangman winning, even if that's 50-50 booking. And given how many mid-card titles exist in this company, it would really make sense to have White or Hangman maybe hold the Continental title or the International title. I know that Takeshita just won that, so that's off limits. But it would make sense for one of them to actually have some legitimate gold and make that be a plot point maybe of a longer feud for them. I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen. This was a great opener. I went 4.25 stars and an A. I know that's a super close grade to the triple threat, and you're going to say, Silver King, how were these matches even in the same ballpark? Because there was a lot of storytelling here. It was super interesting, extremely well wrestled, and it wasn't just about the spots. While the other match, until the finish, which was an interference finish, was largely just spot after spot after spot, and who can do what, and how cool can they make it look. And there's nothing wrong with that. I super enjoyed it. But that doesn't, for me, make it this crazy match that breaks barriers and does all this stuff because, hey, I've seen many of those moves happen before, maybe not in the same sequence and order, with different people. But at the end of the day, when it comes to me evaluating wrestling, I want more than that for something to get an A+. Simple as that. Now, Swerve Strickland returned. This was a big promoted segment for this show. It came immediately after the international title match. Prince Nana shilled his coffee, introduced Swerve as his boss. Swerve said he's medically cleared. He is feeling some karma, though, for everything he said to Danielson. He has neck issues and tingling and all that. He didn't mention anything about Hangman beating his ass, but he said he was going to give an update on his future when suddenly MVP and Shelton Benjamin interrupted. MVP's pitch was his history, taking former champions and helping them become great again. Swerve put MVP and Shelton over and teased turning on Nana by discussing all of his recent failures before saying he will never turn his back on family. There was a shoving match with everyone separated by officials after Shelton got really heated. And that was it. No Bobby Lashley as expected. I suppose the booking will be Swerve Shelton in a match with Lashley maybe debuting in that situation. Swerve was actually great going back and forth about Nana. He controlled the entire segment as usual. His character work is top tier at this point, and really you can put him in there with anyone, and it seems like he will make it work. Unfortunately, though, this ended with a major dud and no climax. It's okay, and I actually enjoy when you take storylines and you make segments on pay-per-views. I think it's really smart to do. It should get people to watch your television show on Wednesday. But if you're going to do that, it needs to have a climax. Something needs to happen where you say, oh, that was so worthwhile. I'm so glad they did that. And this was literally just a Dynamite segment on WrestleDream, which, as I mentioned on the Ultimate Preview, there were a number of matches, including one that we're going to talk about next, that was just a Dynamite match on WrestleDream. So let's talk about that match. It was the TNT Championship. Jack Perry defending against Katsuyori Shibata. Slow match. It was mostly a test of will with chops and such. Shibata hit a nice Death Valley driver and a neck breaker over the knee. He got Perry in a rear naked choke with a leg scissors, but his shoulders were down while he was on his back, and the referee counted 1, 2, 3 with Perry retaining the title. Jack attacked him with the title after the bell until Daniel Garcia saved. MJF then surprised to confront him, only for Perry to attack Garcia from behind with the title. MJF put his foot on Garcia's throat, bragging about his movie roles, trying to do the Elias line of getting Seattle Supersonics heat, saying they were as real as Garcia's bidding war. Facts there, though. I'm glad he said that, as he reported on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover weeks ago. MJF revealed that he found the Dynamite Diamond ring. He was set to punch Garcia with it when Adam Cole made a surprise return. He ran into the ring and MJF got out of dodge, and that was pretty much it. This whole post-match was certainly notable and exciting, with an enormous reaction for Cole, who obviously appears to be cleared. I could have sworn they were not going to address the MJF Cole stuff. Like, I thought they were going to bury the entire angle. You had MJF, when he originally returned, kind of step on the devil mask and say, this is bullshit, stupid, like, we're done. But I guess they're just going to go right back to MJF Cole, which is pretty interesting. It's also odd that Cole was the heel who turned on MJF and created this stable, yet he got babyface rub here. I mean, it works better for both of them with MJF being heel and Cole being face, but that's not how they left. And no matter what MJF has done recently, if you think back to their feud, MJF is the face and Cole's the heel. As far as the match, I saw no reason to protect Shibata in this situation. He hadn't even wrestled a singles match since August. More reason he didn't deserve the title shot at all. And he's taken clean losses to plenty of talent in AEW. Basically, we were told that Jack isn't as good or important as Wheeler Yuta, because Wheeler Yuta beat Shibata clean, and Jack needed a happenstance victory, which was a super downer for the crowd in this situation. Plus, you know there's not going to be a rematch. In fact, I have no idea what's happening coming out of this. It seemed like Garcia was going to set up for a TNT title match against Perry, but then you have MJF and Garcia who need to feud, and now Cole's back, so he's feuding with MJF. So it's not the worst thing that multiple people have a lot of different feuds happening simultaneously. That's really good, but it's going to be real interesting to see the prioritization of this and how it all works together, because that's 4 dudes. And yeah, you could do like a tag team match. You could do Garcia and Cole against MJF and Perry. But really, what sense does that make? I mean, it's very odd at a minimum. And that also brings me back to something that I didn't mention when we talked about the main event and Mox's crew, which, by the way, still doesn't have a name. I can't say BCC because it's not BCC, but they still don't have a name. So now they're doing their hostile takeover of AEW. Has the EVP storyline just been like completely dropped or 90% dropped at this juncture? I mean, I know there's still the EVPs and Christopher Daniels still exists in his role for some reason, but it seems this new Mox group has just taken all of that thunder, and the Elite just do not matter at all anymore, at least in their original goal. So that'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of television. Now, those were all the matches and segments I was going to break down in totality. We will get to everything else in detail on Thursday's show, but I do still have some results and some quick thoughts on the remaining matches on the main card. Women's Championship, Mariah May against Willow Nightingale. The finish came with it looking like Willow would hit an avalanche Dr. Bomb. Instead, May countered into a Hurricanrana, following with a Pump Knee and Storm Zero to retain the title. It was definitely the right booking decision, given Nightingale hardly deserved the match in the first place after losing to Chris Statlander. The Tag Team Championship, Young Bucks against Private Party. They all wore the same colors, which I thought was odd and totally avoidable. There were some false finishes late. The Bucks ultimately won with TK Driver to retain the titles. We, of course, expected that. The ROH title, Mark Briscoe defending against Chris Jericho. Jericho on Rampage said Briscoe needs to be humbled. He refused to apologize for getting in his head and making things personal. This seemed to be much better than expected as a match. The fans were hyped as I was kind of scrolling through it. Briscoe appropriately won with the J Driller to honor his brother and retain the championship. Darby Allin against Brody King. Darby hit coffin drop on Brody atop the upturned steel steps. I believe that's what he did to Jeff Hardy back in the day, or Hardy did a swanton bomb onto Darby, who was on the steps like that. It was one or the other. But then he hit a second coffin drop onto King's back as he ran into the ring to beat the count. And he got the 1-2-3 after that. Definitely the right winner, with Brody having never been given anything significant as a singles competitor. House of Black is in this dead zone right now. Darby obviously needs the win. It seems like they're going to rehabilitate him, and maybe he ends up beating Mox for the title down the line. I don't know. We will find out. Hologram beat the Beast Mortos in a 2 of 3 falls match. He won 2-1 with a helicopter powerbomb to improve 15-0. This was the most predictable match of the entire show. There was also a backstage segment with Jerry Lynn and Orange Cassidy. We'll talk about that on Thursday. The Acclaimed fought MXM Collection. MXM was going to bring out a third to counter Billy Gunn, and apparently it was Rico from back in the day in WWF. So, we'll talk about that also on Thursday. There was Harley Cameron against Anna Jay in a 0-hour match. I believe there was some conglomeration 8-man tag match, and ROH TV title Atlantis Jr. against Brian Cage. I didn't get to watch any of those. So all of that, along with some of those matches I gave you brief details about their finishes, all of that we're going to discuss on Thursday, along with any second look content from all of the matches I broke down and the major storylines that developed on AEW WrestleDream. I know this was a different type of instant analysis, and for anyone out there who, was really looking forward to the hour and a half show, if this disappoints you, I apologize for that. Working in sports and doing wrestling simultaneously, it is immensely difficult to do it all on a night like this, where major games are happening in the evening and the pay-per-view is happening simultaneously. Every single wrestling show since the start of football season has been a conflict. As far as the Silver King and Vintage Chris Vanini both go. Vintage was actually at the Red River Rivalry, so he didn't even get to watch WrestleDream, which is, of course, why he wasn't here on the instant analysis. But we're always going to do our best to bring you these types of podcasts and to cover WWE and AEW in totality every single week. That's why I didn't want to bring you this podcast late Sunday afternoon, right before kickoff of the NFL games, after finally watching everything in total. I wanted you to have something that you could chew on, get those Silver King opinions flowing through your ear holes, this performance enhancing audio that we love to present to you. I wanted to make sure you had something as soon as possible after AEW WrestleDream. So I hope to that end, this delivered. Like I said, we will break down the rest of the show and take a second look back at the stuff we already discussed this coming Thursday on our next AEW and NXT show. Between now and then on Tuesday, we'll be back with your next WWE episode. In terms of grades, because that is kind of a good way for us to wrap this, I'm not going to give you my own final grade on the show until I watch it in its totality. But I can tell you what all of you thought about AEW WrestleDream. First, the pre-show grades. I came in with an expectation grade of 89 out of 100. I thought it would be a high B+ show. All of you are getting overheads. You got to vote on Twitter at Getting Overcast. 6.5% A, 51.6% B, 29% C, 12.9% D to F, which was a lot higher than I have ever thought would vote that grade ahead of an AEW show. That actually averages out to an 80 out of 100, but I'm going to move that all the way up to an 83 out of 100, a low B, because that's just kind of ridiculously low. And also the sample size on the poll was small. So I'm giving some credit where I think it was due, because even though the card, we talked about it, it was half Dynamite matches and half matches that could really deliver. I thought those matches going in looked like they would deliver. And I have a feeling if there were more votes out there, the number would have been higher. So I'm going to tweak that up a little bit. 83 out of 100 was the pre-show expectation grade. Again, I will give you my final grade for the show and for all the other matches on Thursday. But in terms of the listeners or getting overheads, here's what you thought. 8.3% A+ to A, 25% A- to B+, 44% B to B-, 22.6% C+ or lower. And that averages out to an 83 out of 100, a low B. So I did not adjust the initial expectation score, knowing that would be the final score. I paused this and I had to do the calculations, but it ends up being pretty much exactly the same. I have to believe this would be the lowest rated AEW pay-per-view that we've ever done based on your final grade. And we'll see if I completely agree. I don't think I'm going to, though, just based on the matches I already discussed. And I did see a lot of highlights from skimming through the others. I don't think I'm going to agree that this is a low B show. But do I think it's an A show? Certainly not. Probably not in that range at all. Again, final grades will come on Thursday. Thank you all so much for listening to this adjusted instant analysis edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, a couple quick reminders. First, this show
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can vote in the polls that we just talked about, send in questions and comments for the show. I got a bunch during WrestleDream. We will discuss those on Thursday. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You get instant reaction audio to every major TV show and exclusive news posts on Fridays. Again, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, 3 a.m. Eastern on the dot as we are wrapping up this AEW WrestleDream instant analysis. Like I said, in terms of AEW, much more to come. This Thursday, we'll be back talking WWE in totality on Tuesday. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.